A fortress of stone rises against a misty sky, a silent guardian of 1,000 secrets. We often picture the Middle Ages as a time of superstition and stagnation, but behind those castle walls lay minds of startling brilliance. This era was not a dark pause in history, but a forge of innovation that built our modern world. I will reveal 25 incredible medieval inventions, from the simple crank to the revolutionary blast furnace, that fundamentally reshaped everything from warfare and farming to our very concept of time. You will discover the hidden ingenuity that powered cathedrals into the heavens and armed explorers to cross vast oceans. How did a simple foot support create an entire social class of knights? What forgotten machine allowed a single person to lift stones heavier than an elephant? What one invention literally helped bring the world into focus, fueling an entire rebirth of knowledge? When you think of the forces that built our world, how much credit does the medieval mind truly deserve? The first great breakthrough did not come from a castle or a cathedral, but from the mud of a field. It was the heavy plough, a tool so transformative it literally reshaped the landscape of Europe, while the simple scratch plough used in the lighter soils of the Mediterranean merely gouged a line in the earth. The heavy plough was a different beast entirely. Its secret was a new component called the moldboard, a curved piece of wood or metal fixed behind the blade. As the plough was dragged forward, often by a team of 8 oxen, this moldboard did something magical. It did not just scratch the surface, it lifted the dense, wet, nutrient-rich soil of northern Europe, sliced it from the earth and turned it over completely. Imagine a slice of cake being cleanly lifted and flipped onto its side. This is what the moldboard did to the earth, aerating the heavy clay and bringing fresh nutrients to the surface. This innovation, which emerged from the Slavic regions, was the key that unlocked a continent. Before its widespread adoption, the vast fertile plains north of the Alps were largely untamed wilderness, their soil too thick and waterlogged for the old tools to manage. The heavy plough changed everything. It allowed settlers to cultivate these rich lands for the first time, leading to a massive agricultural boom. With more food being produced, populations began to surge. This new abundance did not just fill bellies, it fundamentally reorganized society, giving rise to the manorial system where life revolved around the lord's estate and the vast open fields now made productive by this incredible machine. The heavy plough did not merely till the soil, it laid the very foundation for the kingdoms that would follow. With the land itself conquered by the plough, the medieval world turned its ambition to the heavens. This ambition took physical form in the great cathedrals, structures of such immense scale and weight that their very construction seems to defy logic. How did builders hoist stones weighing tons to dizzying heights without modern machinery? The answer lies in a human-powered engine of pure ingenuity, the treadwheel crane. Picture a massive wooden wheel as tall as 2 men, mounted horizontally within the skeletal timber frame of a rising tower. Inside this wheel, a single laborer would walk, much like a human hamster, his steady steps causing the entire apparatus to rotate. This was not a pointless march. The rotating wheel turned a central axle, which was connected to a system of wooden gears. These gears provided the crucial mechanical advantage, multiplying the man's walking force many times over. Through a rope wound around a drum, this translated into enough power to lift colossal blocks of stone or heavy wooden beams with a slow, deliberate, and unstoppable strength. The men who powered these wheels were known as treaders, and their workplace was nicknamed the squirrel cage, a term that perfectly captures the endless, cyclical nature of their vital task. One person walking in a circle could achieve what would have required a team of 50 men pulling on ropes. This simple yet brilliant gear mechanism was the silent, beating heart of every major construction project. It was the treadwheel crane that placed the very keystones of Gothic arches and raised the spires that seemed to scratch the sky. It stands as a powerful symbol of the medieval era's architectural daring, a perfect fusion of human endurance and clever engineering that literally built the impossible. Yet the ambition to build upwards was matched by a growing desire to voyage outwards. While cathedrals reached for the heavens, a new invention would guide explorers across the trackless sea, a tool that seemed to capture a piece of the sky itself. This was the magnetic compass, and its journey to Europe is a tale shrouded in the mist of ancient trade routes. The secret of the lodestone, a naturally magnetic rock that aligns with the Earth's poles, was known in China for centuries. But it was the medieval world that transformed this curiosity into a lifeline for sailors. The earliest European compasses were beautifully simple. A magnetized needle was placed on a sliver of straw or wood and set afloat in a bowl of water. There, freed from friction, the needle would spin slowly until it pointed unerringly north. Can you fathom the sheer wonder of that moment for a mariner? Under a sky perpetually clouded over with no sun or stars to guide them, this small, trembling needle became their constant celestial guide. It was a piece of magic made real. This simple device did more than just prevent ships from getting lost. It gave captains the confidence to leave the safety of the coastline, to strike out across the deep, open ocean where the winds were stronger and the routes faster. They could now navigate with a confidence once reserved for clear nights, plotting courses based on the needle's unwavering direction. This newfound precision in open sea travel was the crucial spark. It directly enabled the daring voyages that would define the end of the medieval period and the dawn of the age of exploration. The compass did not just point north. It pointed toward new worlds, guiding Europe's ships to horizons they had only ever dreamed of. While the compass guided ships across vast oceans, another simple invention was reshaping the very battlefields of Europe. It was the stirrup, a humble piece of metal and leather that fundamentally altered the dynamics of power. Before its widespread adoption, a warrior on horseback was inherently unstable. He could ride to a fight, but the actual combat was a precarious affair, a matter of throwing spears or slashing with a sword while desperately gripping the horse with his legs. The stirrup changed everything by providing a solid platform. It was not just a place to rest the foot, it was an anchor. By bracing his feet in the stirrups, a rider could lock himself onto his horse, becoming a single, unstoppable unit with his mount. This stability was the key that unlocked the true potential of the knight. Now he could wield the ultimate medieval weapon, the couched lance. Instead of throwing it, he would tuck the long, heavy spear firmly under his arm, using the combined weight and speed of the charging horse to deliver a single, devastating impact. The force generated was cataclysmic, enough to shatter shields, pierce armor, and unhorse an opponent in an instant. This new form of combat, the cavalry charge, became the dominant force on the battlefield. But the stirrup's impact echoed far beyond the clash of arms. Mastering this style of warfare required immense training, a powerful war horse, and expensive armor, an investment far beyond the means of a common farmer. This created a new social elite, the knightly class, whose military service was paid for with land and privilege. To support these specialized warriors, a whole system of obligations and land grants emerged, binding lords to their vassals in a web of mutual duty. This was the feudal system, a social and political structure built quite literally upon the foundation of a simple foot support. The stirrup did not just create a new way to fight. It forged an entire social order, one where the man on horseback became the ultimate symbol of medieval power. This new power, anchored in the stirrup and expressed through the knight's lance, was built upon a foundation of written words and intricate craftsmanship. Yet for many, the very tools of learning and creation were blurring into incomprehensibility with age. A solution emerged from the workshops of 13th century Italy, one that would sharpen the world for generations to come: eyeglasses. The earliest versions were known as rivet spectacles, two simple magnifying lenses made from rock crystal or glass, each set in a frame. These frames were not hooked over the ears as they are today. Instead, they were connected by a central rivet, a small metal pin, that allowed them to be balanced precariously on the bridge of the nose. Can you picture a scholar hunched over a manuscript by flickering candlelight, finally able to decipher the tiny, cramped script that had been a frustrating blur for years? For the first time, the slow, inevitable fate of close-up vision was not a final sentence. Scribes whose hands were still steady found their careers extended by decades. Artisans, from clockmakers to illustrators, could return to the minute details of their craft with a clarity they had thought lost forever. This was more than mere convenience. It was a profound liberation of human potential. The ability to correct vision effectively doubled the productive lifespan of the most skilled members of society. Knowledge was no longer lost as eyesight failed. Intricate skills were preserved and passed on. By bringing the minute details of a text, a blueprint, or a painting into sharp focus, eyeglasses became a fundamental catalyst for the accumulation and advancement of knowledge. They fueled the very intellectual fervor that would characterize the Renaissance, ensuring that the wisdom of the past could be seen clearly and the innovations of the future could be built with precision. But while eyeglasses brought the small and immediate into focus, an even more profound invention was about to give humanity mastery over something vast and abstract, time itself. The mechanical clock emerged from a world governed by the inconsistent rhythms of nature. Sundials were useless on cloudy days or at night, and water clocks would freeze in winter. The great monastic communities of Europe, whose lives were built around a strict schedule of prayer, desperately needed a more reliable way to mark the hours. Their quest for punctuality gave birth to a machine of mesmerizing complexity. The heart of the first mechanical clocks was a mechanism known as the verge and foliot escapement. Picture a horizontal bar, the foliot, with small weights at each end, swinging back and forth like a slow, deliberate metronome. This bar was connected to a vertical shaft, the verge, which had two small pallets that engaged with a specially shaped gear, the escape wheel. As a heavy weight slowly descended, driving the entire mechanism, it tried to spin the escape wheel, but the pallets on the verge would catch the teeth of the wheel, allowing it to turn only one tooth at a time with each swing of the foliot. This action produced that iconic sound, the steady tick-tock that became the heartbeat of a new age. This clever dance of gears and weights did not just tell time. It captured time, breaking its endless flow into measured mechanical segments. These first monumental clocks, installed in church towers and town squares, were more than timekeepers. They were public spectacles, their bells ringing out to coordinate the life of an entire city. Workers no longer relied on the position of the sun. The clock told them when to start work, when to break for a meal, and when their day was done. Markets opened and closed by the hour. The regimented clock time began to replace fluid natural time, imposing a new order and efficiency upon medieval society. This was the true revolution of the mechanical clock. It transformed time from a personal, spiritual experience into a shared, public commodity, laying the groundwork for the modern world's obsession with schedules and punctuality. That relentless, measured ticking of the clock gave society a new rhythm, but it was another thunderous sound that would truly reshape the medieval world, the roar of the blast furnace. This was not a simple blacksmith's forge. It was a towering stone structure, a man-made volcano that achieved what was once thought impossible. It turned solid iron ore into a raging river of liquid metal. Earlier forges could only heat iron until it became a soft, spongy mass that had to be laboriously hammered to remove impurities. The blast furnace's secret was a continuous, powerful blast of air. Great water wheels driven by a nearby river powered massive bellows that forced a constant stream of oxygen into the furnace's base. This supercharged the burning charcoal, driving temperatures higher than ever before, hot enough to completely melt the iron ore. Inside that fiery chamber, a chemical miracle occurred. The iron separated from the rocky waste, sinking to the bottom as a pure, molten liquid, while the lighter slag floated on top to be drained away. This liquid cast iron could then be poured like water into waiting molds made of sand. Can you conceive the power in that act? For the first time, metal was not just hammered into shape, it was cast, given form by a hollow space. This single innovation unleashed a flood of new possibilities. From these molds emerged the first truly effective cast iron cannons, weapons that could shatter castle walls and would dominate warfare for centuries. It produced intricate firebacks for hearths, which radiated warmth more efficiently into a room, but perhaps its most profound impact was on everyday life. The blast furnace made metal cheap and plentiful. Farmers could now own iron plowshares that lasted for generations. Carpenters had access to durable nails and tools. The increased availability of strong cast metal tools transformed every craft and trade, turning iron from a luxury for warriors into the sturdy backbone of an entire civilization. The roar of the blast furnace forged a world of stronger tools, but it was a far quieter hum that would clothe the growing populations of Europe. This was the gentle, rhythmic whir of the spinning wheel, a machine that transformed one of humanity's most fundamental tasks. For thousands of years, creating thread relied on the drop spindle, a simple weighted rod. A spinner would painstakingly draw out fibers from a mass of wool or flax, then set the spindle twisting and dropping to spin them into yarn. It was a slow, portable, and deeply skilled craft. The spinning wheel, arriving in Europe around the 13th century, changed the very nature of the work. It mechanized the twisting motion. A large drive wheel, turned by hand or later by a foot treadle, was connected by a looped cord to a much smaller spindle. This simple gear ratio meant one turn of the big wheel would spin the tiny spindle dozens of times, automating the most laborious part of the process. The spinner could now focus entirely on drawing out the fibers evenly, feeding them onto the rapidly whirling spindle. The efficiency was staggering. A spinner with a wheel could produce thread many times faster than someone using a drop spindle. This single invention broke a critical bottleneck in cloth production, creating a surplus of yarn that could feed the looms of weavers. But this technological leap had a profound social consequence. Spinning had always been women's work, often done in spare moments throughout the day. The spinning wheel, however, centralized and intensified this labor within the home. It became the focal point of the medieval housewife's domain, a piece of equipment so essential that the term spinster evolved to describe her, a woman defined by her mastery of this crucial machine. The spinning wheel did not just make thread, it wove the very economic contribution of women into the fabric of daily life, powering a textile revolution from the heart of the household. The hum of the spinning wheel provided the thread, but it was a new, more complex rhythm that would truly weave the fabric of medieval commerce. That rhythm came from the horizontal loom, a machine of such brilliant engineering it turned weaving from a cottage craft into a major industrial force. The old vertical loom was a simple frame where the weaver had to manually lift and lower the warp threads with one hand while passing the weft thread through with the other. It was a slow, physically demanding process. The horizontal loom revolutionized this by laying the warp threads flat and introducing a set of foot pedals called treadles. Each treadle was connected by cords to a heddle, a device that held a specific set of warp threads. With a simple tap of his foot, the weaver could raise one entire set of threads, creating a clean, wide opening known as the shed. This freed both of his hands to swiftly throw a shuttle carrying the weft thread from one side to the other. One foot tap, one smooth pass of the shuttle, a beat to press the new thread tight, then the other foot tap to change the shed and repeat. This pedal-driven dance was exponentially faster and far less exhausting, but the true magic was in the complexity. A weaver could now operate multiple heddles with different treadle patterns, allowing for intricate designs like twills and herringbones to be created with a consistency that was impossible before. This new efficiency did not just produce more cloth, it completely transformed the social standing of the weaver. Mastering the horizontal loom required significant training and capital investment, moving the craft out of the home and into specialized workshops. This professionalization gave rise to powerful weaving guilds, organizations that controlled quality, set prices, and protected the secrets of the trade. Towns whose fortunes were built on this new technology, like those in Flanders, grew immensely wealthy, their economic power woven directly from the steady, rhythmic clatter of the foot-powered loom. A new sound began to echo across the battlefields of the 14th century, one that was neither the clang of steel nor the thud of the treadwheel. It was the deafening roar of the cannon, an invention that would shatter the old world of chivalry as decisively as it shattered stone walls. The earliest European cannons, like the pot de feu, were rudimentary iron pots shaped like a vase, firing a giant arrow, but the technology evolved with frightening speed. Artisans learned to cast longer, stronger barrels from bronze and iron, creating weapons of terrifying power. The culmination of this arms race was the massive bombard, a behemoth of forged iron hoops that could hurl a stone ball weighing hundreds of pounds. The sheer spectacle of these weapons was as potent as their impact. Witnesses described the fire and smoke as the breath of a dragon, a man-made thunder that could be heard for miles. The psychological terror they inflicted was often as effective as the physical destruction. For the first time, the high, thick walls that had defined security for centuries were no longer a guarantee. A well-placed shot from a bombard could pulverize a gatehouse or collapse a curtain wall, reducing a symbol of invincibility to rubble in a matter of days. This new reality fundamentally shifted the balance of power. Fortifying a castle was now a race against ever larger artillery, a race that only the wealthiest could hope to win. The era of the private castle, the stronghold of a local lord, was drawing to a close. The enormous cost of forging these bronze giants and the steady supply of expensive gunpowder required to feed them concentrated military might into the hands of kings and central governments. The cannon did not just break down stone walls, it broke down the very foundation of feudal power, forging the path toward the modern state with every earth-shattering blast. The thunder of the cannon heralded a new age of centralized power, but a far quieter revolution was already underway in the workshops of scribes and alchemists, one that would democratize knowledge itself. We often credit Johannes Gutenberg with the invention of the printing press in the mid-15th century, a moment that rightly defines the Renaissance. Yet that world-changing machine did not appear from a vacuum. It was the direct culmination of centuries of medieval innovation, a puzzle whose critical pieces were forged long before Gutenberg assembled them. The first of these pieces was paper. Parchment made from the scraped skins of sheep or calves was prohibitively expensive and time-consuming to produce. A single Bible required the skins of more than 200 animals. Medieval paper mills, adapted from earlier Chinese and Islamic technology, offered a revolutionary alternative. These mills used water wheels to power trip hammers that pulped old rags and linen into a fibrous slurry, which was then pressed and dried into sheets. This process created a writing surface that was not only far cheaper than parchment, but also more uniform and readily available. For the first time, the material cost of a book was no longer an insurmountable barrier. The second crucial piece was ink. The water-based inks used by scribes for centuries were perfect for pen and parchment, but they would simply run and smudge when applied to metal type. Medieval alchemists and artists solved this problem by developing a durable, oil-based ink. By grinding pigments like lampblack into linseed or walnut oil, they created a viscous ink that would adhere cleanly to metal surfaces and transfer sharply onto paper without bleeding. This was the essential chemical partner to the mechanical press. Without these two medieval breakthroughs, cheap paper and strong ink, Gutenberg's press would have been silent. His genius lay in combining these existing technologies with the new concept of reusable, movable metal type. So when we think of the printing press, we should see it not as a sudden spark, but as the final, brilliant flare of medieval ingenuity, a testament to an era that patiently built the tools to reproduce its own voice for all the world to hear. That same ingenuity that forged cannons and built cathedrals also found its way into the hands of the common laborer. While grand machines were reshaping battlefields and cities, a far simpler device was transforming the daily grind on every farm and building site: the wheelbarrow. Its design was a masterpiece of practical physics. A single large wheel positioned directly under the load bore the brunt of the weight, while two long wooden handles gave the operator both control and leverage. This configuration was a revelation. Instead of two people struggling to carry a heavy stone between them with a pole, one person could now lift the handles and effortlessly roll a load that was many times heavier. The secret was in the balance. The wheel became the pivot point, with the person acting not as a beast of burden, but as a guiding force. Think of the backbreaking work of moving piles of mortar up a wooden ramp to the masons working high on a cathedral wall. With a wheelbarrow, a single laborer could make that trip again and again. His body spared the crushing weight, his progress swift and steady. On a farm, the harvest was no longer a slow procession of heavy baskets. A farmer could wheel his grain from the field to the barn in a fraction of the time, or transport manure to fertilize the fields with newfound ease. This humble tool did not require a team of oxen or a complex system of gears. It multiplied human effort through pure, elegant design. The wheelbarrow gave one person the strength of several, saving an incalculable amount of labor and time. It was the ultimate democratization of power, putting immense physical leverage directly into the hands of the individual. The strength of a knight or the pull of a plough was only as good as the hooves that carried it. A horse with a bruised or split hoof was as useless as a ship with a hole in its hull, and the hard, unforgiving roads of medieval Europe posed a constant threat. The solution was as simple as it was transformative: the iron horseshoe. This was not merely a piece of metal. Nailed directly to the hard outer surface of the hoof, the shoe acted as a sacrificial layer, a durable shield that took the punishment of rocks and rough ground so the living tissue beneath did not have to. This simple act of protection fundamentally changed the relationship between humans and horses. A shod horse could travel greater distances over hard-packed roads without going lame, which accelerated the speed of communication and trade across the continent. Messengers and merchants could push their animals further and faster, confident in the knowledge that their journey would not end in a crippled animal. But the impact was just as profound in the fields. The same protection that allowed a warhorse to charge across a stony battlefield also allowed a heavy draft horse to pull a plow through tough, root-filled soil for hours on end without injury. This reliability made the horse, rather than the slower ox, the preferred source of agricultural power in many regions, leading to more efficient farming and greater food production. The economic and military reliance on equine power became absolute, all secured by a curved piece of iron. The clatter of a shod hoof on a cobblestone street became the sound of a connected, mobile society, a rhythm of progress forged in the humble blacksmith's fire. The relentless turning of the spinning wheel and the rhythmic clatter of the loom were powered by a principle so fundamental, it became the hidden muscle of the medieval world, the crank and connecting rod. This was the brilliant mechanical answer to a simple problem: how to transform the familiar circular motion of a wheel into the back and forth motion of a saw or a pump. The crank itself is a lever set at a right angle to a rotating shaft. Imagine a simple hand grinder for sharpening tools, a wheel with a handle on its side. As you turn that handle in a continuous circle, you are using a crank. Now attach a rigid rod to the end of that crank, linking it to another tool, like the piston of a pump or the blade of a saw. This is the connecting rod. As the crank turns, the far end of the rod is forced to move in a straight line, back and forth, back and forth. This elegant partnership unlocked a universe of new machines. A carpenter could now operate a drill with a simple turning motion, rather than the laborious back and forth of a bow drill. More powerfully, when connected to a water wheel, the crank and rod system could automate this process on an industrial scale. The rotating water wheel would turn a crankshaft, which then, through a series of connecting rods, would power the heavy saws of a timber mill, lifting and dropping them with relentless, tireless force. This single mechanical concept, perfected in the Middle Ages, became the core DNA of nearly all complex machinery that followed. It is the very same principle that, centuries later, would work in reverse inside the internal combustion engine, where the back and forth motion of pistons is transformed by the crankshaft into the rotary motion that turns your car's wheels. The medieval mind did not just build machines, it decoded a universal language of motion, one that still powers our world today. That same mechanical ingenuity was now reshaping the very air people breathed within their own homes. For centuries, the central hearth was the heart of a medieval hall, a fire burning on a stone slab in the middle of the room. Its smoke would simply rise and collect under the roof, eventually seeping out through a simple hole or the eaves. This design trapped heat at the ceiling, filled the room with a constant, eye-stinging haze, and made the upper floors of any building uninhabitable. The invention of the chimney, a fireplace built into a wall with a dedicated flue, was a quiet revolution in domestic life. It did not just move the fire. It fundamentally redefined the concept of interior space. By channeling the smoke up through a narrow, enclosed shaft, the chimney pulled the heat and the dangerous fumes out of the living area. Suddenly, the air near the floor was clear and breathable. This single architectural change had cascading effects. With the fire safely contained against a stone or brick wall, builders could now construct multiple stories, each with its own fireplace and flue, without fear of the entire structure filling with smoke or catching fire. The Great Hall, once a single smoky room where everyone ate and slept together, could now be subdivided. Private chambers, known as solar rooms, were built above, each warmed by their own fireplace. Families could retreat to these smaller, more intimate spaces, enjoying a level of privacy and personal comfort that was previously unimaginable. The hearth was no longer the communal center of a smoky universe. It became a personal source of warmth tucked into the wall of a private room. The chimney did not merely carry away smoke, it carried medieval society out of the communal dark and into the age of the private, comfortable home. A tiny disc of bone or wood, pierced with a few holes, would soon stitch together a new vision of the self. The common button arrived in 13th century Europe not as a decoration, but as a revolutionary fastener. Before its adoption, clothing was largely loose and flowing, held together by pins, laces, or simply draped over the body. A cloak was a cloak, a tunic was a tunic, their shapes dictated by the fall of the fabric. The button changed this relationship entirely. When sewn in a line and paired with a newly invented looped thread called the buttonhole, it created a secure, adjustable closure that could follow the contours of the human form. For the first time, a garment could be tailored, a sleeve could be fitted snugly from shoulder to wrist, a bodice could be cinched close to the torso. This was a sartorial earthquake. The bulky, shapeless robes that had concealed the body for centuries began to give way to garments that accentuated its shape. This was not merely a change in fashion, it was a profound shift in how people presented themselves to the world. The individual body, once hidden within layers of cloth, was now being framed and revealed. This new emphasis on a personalized fit reflected a growing interest in the individual, a move away from the collective and toward personal expression. The wealthy adorned their tight-fitting doublets and gowns with buttons made of precious metals and gems, turning functional fasteners into displays of status and wealth. The button, in its humble practicality, helped tailor the very concept of personal identity, stitching a new, more fitted silhouette onto the frame of medieval society. The tailored silhouette made possible by the button was a new kind of armor for the social self, but a far more potent liquid was being distilled in the hidden workshops of alchemists and apothecaries. Deep within stone-walled rooms, surrounded by strangely shaped glass vessels, these early scientists pursued a mysterious process that would yield a substance they called aqua vitae, the water of life. Distillation was not a new concept, but medieval innovators perfected the apparatus, the alembic still. It was an elegant assembly of a heated pot, a coiled cooling tube, and a receiving flask. The magic happened when a fermented liquid like wine or ale was gently warmed in the pot. The alcohol within, which boils at a lower temperature than water, would vaporize first. These vapors traveled up into the coiled tube, where they were cooled by the surrounding air or a water bath, condensing back into a liquid that dripped into the waiting flask. What emerged was a clear, fiery spirit, many times stronger than the original brew. This aqua vitae was revered as a powerful medicine, a cure-all for everything from melancholy to the plague. Surgeons used it to clean wounds, unknowingly harnessing its antiseptic properties long before the germ theory of disease. But this water of life was also a water of celebration. Diluted and flavored with herbs and honey, it became the ancestor of all modern brandies, whiskeys, and liqueurs, a social lubricant that warmed gatherings and fueled festivities. Its creation marked a pivotal moment in human history. The quest to perfect this process drove the development of better glassware, more precise temperature control, and a deeper understanding of chemistry itself. The alembic still did more than just produce spirits. It distilled the very essence of experimentation, laying the practical foundation for the science of pharmacology and transforming the medieval workshop into a cradle of modern chemistry. The steady rhythm of the water wheel now learned to breathe with the ocean itself. Along sheltered coastlines and wide river estuaries, medieval engineers constructed a machine that danced to the moon's silent tune, the tidal mill. This was not a mill fighting against the current of a river, but one that patiently waited for the sea to do its work. Its design was a masterpiece of passive observation. Builders would construct a large dam or pond across a tidal inlet. A sluice gate was set within this dam, a door that could be opened or closed to control the flow of water. As the tide rose, the gate was opened, allowing the incoming sea to flood the pond. At high tide, the gate was shut, trapping a huge volume of seawater inside. Now the miller simply waited for the tide to recede. With the sea level falling outside the dam, the captured water inside the pond was now higher, desperate to return to its source. The sluice gate was opened again, but this time the pent-up water was channeled through a narrow mill race, where its powerful outward rush turned the paddles of a water wheel with immense force, grinding the grain before finally returning to the sea. This cycle repeated itself not by human effort, but by the celestial certainty of the tides, 2 reliable grinding sessions every single day. Can you hear the quiet genius in that process? It required no fast-flowing river, opening up new regions for industrial power. It represented a profound shift in thinking, a move from simply using nature's power to partnering with its timeless rhythms. The tidal mill stands as a quiet monument to a society that was learning to rid the world, not just as a collection of resources, but as a complex, interconnected machine. While the tidal mill harnessed the patient pulse of the sea, another giant learned to capture the restless energy of the sky. The vertical windmill rose over the flat plains of northern Europe, a wooden titan that turned the very air into work. Its most iconic design was the post mill, a structure of breathtaking simplicity and cleverness. The entire wooden body of the mill, housing the grinding stones and machinery, was balanced on a massive, central vertical post. This meant the miller and his family could physically push a long tail pole extending from the back of the structure, slowly walking the entire mill around its central axis until its large, cloth-sailed arms faced directly into the wind. This ability to pivot was its genius, allowing it to capture the breeze from any direction. When the wind filled those four great sails, it turned a horizontal shaft connected to a system of wooden gears inside. These gears performed a crucial transformation, turning the horizontal rotation of the sails into the vertical rotation needed to spin the heavy millstones. The sound of those stones grinding together, powered by nothing but the invisible force of the wind, was a symphony of progress for regions where rivers were too slow or scarce for watermills. This was not merely a new way to grind flour, it was the birth of wind power on an industrial scale. On the vast open landscapes of countries like England and the Netherlands, these windmills became economic powerhouses, processing the grain from the newly cultivated plains with an efficiency that water could never match. They freed entire communities from their reliance on geography, turning the relentless northern winds into a reliable engine for daily bread and local prosperity. The windmill did not just grind grain, it proved that humanity could build its engines anywhere, even in the empty, wind-swept fields, by reaching up to tame the sky itself. That wooden giant, the windmill, was a testament to reaching for the sky, but the ultimate expression of that ambition was achieved in stone. The soaring height of a Gothic cathedral, with its walls of shimmering stained glass, should have been an architectural impossibility. The immense weight of the stone roof and the outward thrust of the vaults created a force that would push the walls apart and send the entire structure collapsing into rubble. The medieval master masons solved this paradox not by building thicker walls, but by inventing a stone armature that seemed to defy gravity itself, the flying buttress. Picture a graceful arched bridge of stone leaping through the air from a massive freestanding pier to connect with the cathedral's high wall. This was not a decorative flourish. It was a brilliant structural exoskeleton. The flying buttress acted like a set of external ribs, catching the outward thrust of the roof vaults and channeling it down, away from the wall and safely into the ground through its solid pier. This single innovation liberated the walls from their load-bearing duty. They no longer had to be thick, heavy barriers holding up the roof. Instead, they could become delicate screens of stone and glass. The space between the buttresses could now be filled with the breathtaking stained glass windows that defined these sacred spaces. Sunlight, once blocked by thick walls, now poured through these vibrant biblical stories, transforming the interior into a kaleidoscope of divine light. The flying buttress was the hidden key to this ethereal beauty. It was the silent stone logic that made the miracle happen, allowing faith to be written not in dark, enclosed spaces, but in towering, luminous volumes of colored light. A new tension began to tighten the sinews of the medieval battlefield, one drawn from a simple yet devastatingly effective principle. The crossbow, with its stock of hardwood and its short, powerful bow, represented a crisis for the established order of chivalry. Its core innovation was a mechanical trigger, the nut and tumbler, a latch of bone or metal that securely held the drawn bowstring until the moment of release. This simple piece of engineering removed the skill and strength required to aim a traditional bow. An archer needed years of training to draw and hold a longbow at full tension, but a crossbowman simply placed his weapon on the ground, hooked its string to his belt with a grappling iron, and stood up to span it, loading immense force with his legs rather than his arms. This stored energy, unleashed by a gentle squeeze of the lever trigger, could propel a short, heavy bolt or quarrel with enough force to punch through the finest plate armor at close range. Can you grasp the terror this inspired in the heart of a knight? A common foot soldier with only weeks of training could now stand at a distance and bring down a nobleman who had spent his entire life training for war. The social implications were so profound that in 1139, the church attempted to ban its use against Christians, declaring it hateful to God. Of course, this ban was largely ignored, for the crossbow's military advantage was too great. It was the ultimate equalizer, a weapon that severed the direct link between social status and battlefield dominance. The crossbow did not just kill knights, it challenged the very idea that birthright should dictate who held the power of life and death on the field of battle, planting an early and dangerous seed of democratic thought in the soil of a rigidly hierarchical world. That same understanding of isolation, born on the battlefield with the crossbow, found a terrifying new application in the fight against an invisible enemy. The plague swept through Europe with a speed and brutality that defied all medieval understanding of medicine. Cities were paralyzed with corpses piling in the streets and no cure in sight. In the face of this chaos, the port city of Ragusa, modern-day Dubrovnik, made a desperate and revolutionary decision. They reasoned that the disease arrived on ships carried by infected sailors and rats. So in 1377, the city council decreed that all incoming vessels and their crews must remain anchored at a safe distance from the city for a full 40 days before any person or cargo could come ashore. They called this period Quarantagiorni, meaning 40 days in the local dialect. This was not based on any scientific knowledge of bacteria or viral incubation. It was a period derived from biblical and cultural traditions, a length of time thought sufficient for God to reveal if a person was clean or unclean. Yet this act of desperation was a monumental leap in observational science. For the first time, a government was implementing a systematic public health policy based on the logical premise of breaking a chain of transmission. The 40-day window proved remarkably effective, as it was often just long enough for symptoms to appear and run their course in those who were infected. The practice spread rapidly to other Mediterranean ports like Venice, and the term for this isolation, quarantine, entered our global vocabulary. This was the birth of a profound idea that a community could protect itself not by treating the sick, but by preventing the healthy from ever becoming exposed. The medieval quarantine established the foundational principle of all modern epidemiology, that controlling the movement of people during an outbreak is the most powerful tool to save lives. It was a grim but brilliant deduction, a policy forged in the fires of the Black Death that would become humanity's first and most enduring line of defense against pandemics for centuries to come. Yet this new system of quarantine was a defense born of desperation, a reaction to a world in chaos. At the very same time, another medieval institution was being built with the opposite goal: to create order from chaos, not for the body, but for the mind. This was the university, a revolutionary invention that organized and packaged knowledge itself. Before its emergence, learning was a scattered affair, found in monastery schools or with individual, itinerant masters. The university changed everything by creating a corporate body, a universitas, a community of masters and scholars granted a charter by pope or king. This charter gave them legal standing, the right to govern their own members, set their own curriculum, and most importantly, to grant degrees, licenses to teach anywhere in Christendom. Two great models emerged. At Bologna in Italy, the university was a students' guild, where scholars banded together to hire and even fine their professors for poor attendance or tardiness. In Paris, it was a guild of masters who controlled the admission of new teachers and the content of the lectures. This was not a free-for-all of ideas. The curriculum was rigorously standardized around the 7 liberal arts, the trivium of grammar, rhetoric, and logic, followed by the quadrivium of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. This system created a common foundation of thought, a shared language of reason that allowed a scholar from Oxford to debate seamlessly with one from Prague or Salamanca. What did this mean in practice? It meant that for the first time, professions like law, medicine, and theology were no longer trades learned through apprenticeship alone. They were disciplines built upon a standardized body of knowledge, tested through formal disputations, and certified with a universally recognized degree. This created a new class of educated professionals, from doctors and lawyers to administrators and clerics, who could serve the growing bureaucracies of kingdoms and the church. The university forged an international community of the learned, a republic of letters that transcended local borders and loyalties. It was a machine for systemizing thought, a factory for producing a new kind of person, the credentialed expert whose authority came not from birth, but from demonstrated mastery of a defined field of knowledge. The quiet logic of the university met the silent turning of the stars in the palm of a hand. Crafted from gleaming brass, the astrolabe was the medieval world's most sophisticated computer, a pocket-sized model of the entire cosmos. At its heart was a complex stack of rotating plates. Each plate was a map engraved for a specific latitude, showing the local horizon and the key circles of the sky. Over this lay the reter, a delicate web of pointers shaped like stars, which could be spun by hand. This entire assembly was housed in a disc, the mater, with a scale of hours and degrees engraved around its edge. To use it, you would hold the astrolabe by a ring at the top, letting it hang vertically. Then you would sight a specific star or the sun through a pair of pinnules, small sighting holes on a rotating bar called the alidade on the instrument's back. By reading the altitude of the celestial body from the scale, you could then turn the reter on the front until the star pointer matched that altitude on the plate. In an instant, the entire night sky was frozen in brass. The position of the reter against the plate would tell you the current time, show which stars were rising and setting, and even predict the sun's path for any day of the year. For a scholar, it was a portable observatory, a tool for teaching astronomy and casting horoscopes. For a sailor on a calm, featureless sea, it could provide a rough latitude by measuring the height of the North Star, a crucial piece of data when no land was in sight. This beautiful instrument was the ultimate fusion of art, science, and faith, a physical manifestation of a universe believed to be ordered and knowable. It represented the pinnacle of medieval mathematics and craftsmanship, proving that the human mind could build a key to the heavens long before it fully understood their laws. While the post mill pivoted to face the wind, another design embraced its chaotic nature. The vertical axis windmill stood as a stark contrast to its towering cousin, its sails spinning around a central pole like a massive, slow-moving carousel. This was not a machine that turned toward the breeze. It worked with the wind no matter which direction it blew. Its most common design, known as the painmon, featured a set of wooden sails arranged vertically around the central shaft. These sails were often covered with fabric or red matting on one side, creating a crucial difference in resistance. As the wind pushed against the covered side of the sails, it would force them to move, while the open, bare framework on the opposite side offered little resistance as it circled back into the wind. This simple imbalance kept the entire structure rotating, a perpetual dance driven by the wind's invisible push. This ingenious design flourished in the Middle East, a region known for its shifting, unpredictable desert winds where the constant realignment of a post mill would have been impractical. Its true strength lay in its relentless, if somewhat less powerful, consistency. It was perfectly suited for tasks that required a steady, uninterrupted grind rather than bursts of high power. Think of crushing sugarcane to extract its sweet juice, or grinding pigments for dyes and paints, or even pumping water for irrigation. In these applications, a continuous, unvarying rotation was far more valuable than raw, intermittent force. The design eventually traveled to Europe, where it found a niche in specific regions, often powering the fulling mills that pounded and cleansed woven wool. The vertical axis windmill reminds us that medieval ingenuity was not a single path. It was a diverse landscape of solutions, where the quiet, carousel-like spin of a vertical mill solved problems that the grand, pivoting giants of the North could not. From the quiet turning of the spinning wheel to the earth-shattering roar of the cannon, these 25 inventions reveal a world in constant, brilliant motion. We have journeyed from the deep furrows cut by the heavy plough to the celestial mathematics of the astrolabe, from the privacy of a chimney-warmed room to the public order of the mechanical clock. Each of these creations, whether forged in iron, cast in glass, or carved from wood, was a solution to a fundamental human challenge. They were born from the need to eat, to build, to heal, to defend, to explore, and to understand. They empowered the individual with the wheelbarrow, organized society through the university, and connected continents with the compass. This was not a dark age waiting for a renaissance to arrive. It was the very workshop where the modern world was assembled, piece by ingenious piece. The medieval mind gave us the tools to shape our environment, the institutions to structure our knowledge, and the machines that would eventually power our industries. These inventions are the silent, sturdy foundations upon which our lives are still built today. Now I am curious to hear from you. Of all these remarkable innovations, from the stirrup that created a social class to the eyeglasses that brought the world into focus, which one of you find the most fascinating? Share your thoughts in the comments